Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have three pretty big, pretty bullish headlines, actually. ETH outperforming majors on a DeFi comeback narrative. ETH is up 8%, BTC and Solana up 2 to 3% too, but ETH is definitely the strongest performer there. Very curious to dive into Sammy's analysis and what's going on with ETH's outperformance. Second piece of news, BTC ETFs are trading with massive volume, had one of the best days with $6.1 billion in volume. ETH ETFs also had a great day as well. And Ethena is up 30% on a Wintermute proposal as the final headline to distribute revenue to ENA holders, aka to turn on the fee switch. Also got the latest on price action on crypto NFTs. And we have an awesome conversation for the second half of the show planned with Ethermage from Virtuals. Virtuals protocol is an AI x metaverse platform focused on co-ownership of AI agents in gaming, in entertainment. It's a platform that we've been discussing for quite a while on the show as we kind of explore that AI agent landscape for a bit. And I'm definitely looking forward to get into that conversation as well. So stay tuned for that. Today, I have Sammy with me in the co-host seat, and we're ready to start the show. Just before we do that, remind the friends that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is extremely risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution, as bullish as the market might seem, and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Sammy, welcome to the stage. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. There's a lot of stuff happening, kicking off. So good to be abreast of it and dig into it. I think from the AI stuff today, and we've got those node sales from OG Labs, which is like a decentralized infrastructure play. And that's partnership exclusively through Mockaverse for today. But yeah, that's something I've been digging into. I didn't know too much about before in terms of like decentralized nodes for AI. So yeah, super interesting and keen to get into the news.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex one. And as you're saying, I feel like there's more and more stuff to keep track of these days. I was like already pretty busy with my newly found passion of trading memes. Obviously, DeFi now seems to come back, which is something that I love a lot because I enjoyed DeFi somewhere, 4 years ago, quite a lot. That was 10 times more insane and crazier than the current meme trading season that we're seeing. I think for people who haven't been around, it's very hard to imagine how that looked like when you had Binance Smart Chain pools launching on various DeFi protocols and clones of DeFi protocols, offering you millions to billions in APY for the first couple of minutes. You'd rush into that, throw money in, leave that ecosystem, move on to the next thing. So that was a crazy, crazy time. Now, obviously, we also have that AI narrative and the AI mindshare, which is still dominating, and we'll get into those mindshares a bit later in the show as part of the headlines. So how do you deal with basically splitting your attention across all the different things that have interesting news and trading action to offer right now?
Well, I think I just don't split it. I just kind of try and stay abreast of everything and then make a decision as to which one I go deeper on. But the AI stuff for me is probably the main focus, where, I mean, I do trade memes, I hold some memes, but nowhere near as much as like looking at actual protocols that kind of have these kind of utility that's happening. I think for me, the next gigaball run's probably going to be driven through AI, and I'm keen to see once AI has full autonomy over their wallets and are able to like implement DeFi strategies on protocols like completely separate. That's when things could get really interesting. So I know there's a few protocols that have come to market recently with early stage products. So be keen to see that kind of develop.
Yeah, and I think that development is gonna happen a lot faster than we think. And I'm also really curious to hear Ethermage's thoughts on that once we get to the second half on the show and we get into the interview part. But before we do that, we still have a lot of other things to talk to. So let's get into it and start with the price action first, as usual. It's a very green day. BTC is holding the 75K mark, up 0.4% over the last 24 hours. ETH is the strong outperformer, currently up 6% at 2.8K over the last 24 hours. Solana just down a touchdown, 0.5%, but still very, very strongly at $186. In terms of the main headlines, we said it at the top of the show, ETH's outperformance is the first thing we will look into. and how that ties to the entire DeFi market cap being up 17% as well, to get that story on that. Then we have, as the second headline, BTC ETFs with $6.1 billion in trading volume, best day since the days following their inception. Quite interesting to see the moves, the inflows there. We will compare that to the ETH ETFs as well, but also to traditional ETFs, because that volume is so significant that it's outperforming stocks like Netflix or Visa, as Eric Wilkunas, our favorite ETF analyst, was commenting on that. And as the final headline, we'll touch on Ethena being up 30% on that Wintermute proposal to distribute revenue to SENA holders, to turn the fee switch on, conversation that we also had a couple of months ago when it came to Uniswap, and gonna look at both those price actions and see some of the similarities there. In terms of some notable sales, sharing this on screen for everyone watching us either on YouTube or an X video, we have an X copy Deathless selling for 24.6 ETH, CryptoPunk with 3D glasses selling for 29 ETH, and another X copy, a remnant sale for 5.5 ETH. Moving over to the main JPEGs to see what's going on there. Bored Apes are down just a touch on 1% at 11.08 ETH. Pudgies are having a very green day. They are up 4.7%, 8.4 ETH floor for them, but still down 4.5% over the last 7 days, and obviously still even quite far away actually from recapturing that 9 ETH floor. Azukis follow similar price action as Pudgies. They're up 3.6%, 4.95 ETH floor for them. Miladies, they are an interesting token or an interesting NFT collection to observe this week with the cult launch, with the token launch coming closer and closer. Currently at a 4.6 ETH floor, down 2.8% over the last 24 hours, but basically flat over the last 7 days. Another look at some of the meme NFTs, in particular is Proto Gremlins. We touched on them, I think, earlier this week. They were up a fair bit. They're up again, up another 12%, 3.3 ETH floor for them, puts them at a total increase of 18% over the last 7 days. Moving back to the snapshot to take a look at the Web3 Roundup to get you the news from the rest of the space. First, again, pretty bullish piece of news, and the news that Funky will be excited about. I saw him posting about it. Coinbase stock is up 30% over the last 24 hours. That is a massive, massive movement for a stock price, and I think it's also generally a massive movement that we've seen in the stock markets in general, with I think a 1.2 trillion move that happened since the election. Second piece of news, leading research platform Arkham announcing Perpetuals exchange with points program. Definitely will be interesting to look into that, especially as there is a points program attached to that. Unusual raising $1.5 million in the community round on Echo. A French polymarket whale, that was an interesting one, sharing the neighbor method for why they bet so big on Trump. Story was that they bet an 8-figure amount on Trump winning the elections, and this whale particularly focused on election models or on polling models that asked people not what they would vote, but what they think that the neighbor is voting, because we've seen this shy voter bias where voters were probably afraid to disclose that they vote for Trump. So this neighbor method polls basically showcased that Trump has a better chance to win than the traditional polls. And that whale himself set up their own poll to kind of confirm that data point, and was bullish enough to make an 8-figure bet on Trump winning, and obviously won the bet with that. In terms of some more news, Phantom partners up with Jito to give Jito as restaking rewards. ZK Sync DAO to vote on $43 million of incentives to increase TVL on ZK Sync. And Senator Loomis posting, we are going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Funny side note on that, Kaito, the analytics platform, also posted as a consequence of that, that Senator Loomis is now the #1 crypto KOL when it comes to the overall mind share, with actually a pretty significant margin. Sammy, anything from the Web3 Roundup that's standing out to you that you want to touch on?
Well, I think the strategy that the whale deployed to bet 8 figures and win is super interesting. I don't know the specifics, and it's the first time I've heard about it on the show. But I mean, it's interesting to see the two different markets, so like sports betting coming into crypto, and where that will go going forward. And I do think we'll see a lot of these strategies kind of overlap. And I know there's a heavy influence from, like, for instance, poker back in the day. There's a lot of people that kind of came into crypto through poker. And I do think that there's a lot of industries that are overlapping that could potentially, sorry, I just had a pop up, that could potentially integrate even further. I'm pretty bullish for that. But can you just explain that strategy that he used? A neighbor, so he did his own assessment of whether neighbors would vote for Trump.
So basically, a typical poll is: do you vote for Trump or would you vote for Harris, right? And then we've seen traditional polls underestimating people voting for Trump. And even though analysts and poll experts said they did account for that, there's still polls that worded the question different, which wasn't would you vote for Trump or Harris, but who do you think that your neighbor is voting for? And the line of thinking is that you would answer what you would actually vote for, not what you think your neighbor is voting for. And that would kind of remove that bias that you are a Trump voter but don't want to disclose that. And that whale looked at the traditional polls and looked at this neighbor method polls and saw that Trump is basically leading in all those neighbor method polls. And then they contacted one big polling company to run their own poll under that method. They didn't want to disclose which company that was. And once they had the data on that, which again showcased a clear lead for Trump in that polling data, they had enough confidence to make that significant bet on Polymarket and win that.
Yeah, it's smart. It reminds me of sort of NFT trading back in the day. Like, people would look for unusual indicators to place their bets. I think there was one with Goblin Town. This guy that was in the same trading group as me back in the day actually went in with size on this group because he thought, well, all the Bored Apes are kind of playing them down. They're feeling threatened by this project that's coming up through the ranks. And I think it then proceeded to go from like 1 ETH to about 10 ETH plus the floor. And he literally just called it, so, counter trading the timeline. And we're kind of seeing that today with everyone kind of bull posting ETH and switching back from Solana to ETH. And I do wonder whether in the short term, whether the trade is to go back the other way and then buy back again to counter trade that timeline. So yeah, that's super interesting to me, like looking at different indicators to place these directional bets.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is already the perfect segue into the first piece of news. We have 3 major headlines to cover before we will get into the interview part at around the half-hour mark with Ethermage. Sammy, you mentioned it perfectly. ETH outperformance is the talk of the timeline. Do you want to set up that piece of news for us and discuss what's going on with ETH and the DeFi comeback arc?
Yeah, so ETH has obviously been under the hammer for probably, I don't know how long. It's just been down only when you compare it to both the Bitcoin and the Sol charts. I think the Trump win has effectively brought about this DeFi renaissance, and it kind of leans into the regulatory clarity that people think we're probably going to get from that. And there's been talks of, I think we shared a clip yesterday around potentially Gary Gensler getting the boot from the SEC, and then maybe a change happening from that side of things, and actually being pro like tech and blockchain and crypto, and kind of providing that clarity that we need, not just rather than being kind of this like the stick approach, so more of a carrot approach. So I think that's probably leaning into it, and I think that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. It's been oversold for some time. It's making a comeback. I think that if you look at some of the indicators, like the ETH ETF, I know you touched on it earlier, but that's been pretty much negative outflows since it opened. Like, I think it's down net $500 million in terms of net outflows in total across all the ETH ETFs. Now, by and large, that's the grayscale stuff exiting, offset by some inflows into these other funds. But yesterday, I think there was a 50 million inflow. So like, you're reducing that outflow total by 10% on a single day. And that's been open for a couple of months now. So it's quite a significant flow, and people are obviously bullish in terms of, okay, well, we want exposure to ETH. And maybe we'll see that continue. I do wonder, though, if we go to ultrasound money, from an ETH price action standpoint, I don't know in terms of the actual burn, whether that will be significant enough to make it deflationary. And since the recent upgrades, like all the layer 2 proliferation and kind of activity moving to that chain, and then we've, like, if Brett was on, he would talk about obviously that settlement cost and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, that would have to change quite significantly for that to become deflationary from that side. But I do wonder whether you've got all these protocols coming to market, like the Biddle Fund's been around for a while, but there's the Franklin Templeton spoke about deploying a fund. I think that's on base though. But then there was another one that announced last week as well. So I do think that we start to see more activity on Ethereum mainnet, and ultimately it's got the most developers still. So you'd expect that to continue. So hopefully over time that will kind of, the activity will increase, and maybe that will improve the value of ETH as a token. But I think people are just super bullish, hoping for regulatory clarity, and maybe these fee switches being turned on as well. So for instance, Uniswap's hinted at something historically. Aave is a potential. So there's a lot of DeFi protocols that could potentially turn these fee switches on. And then all of a sudden you've got these tokens that are associated with these protocols actually having some real tangible value. And institutions love cash flow models. They love like seeing, okay, well, I'm getting revenue for this token. Like this is how I measure like traditional assets. Therefore, I can kind of apply that model to crypto assets now, because we get revenue, we get cash flows. So I think there's this whole discussion around this DeFi renaissance with ETH being the leader in that.
Yeah, fantastic overview on that. Thank you very much for that, Sammy. Just the only thing that I would add on that, because we have to keep it moving after that, is to take a quick look on Kaito, that analytics platform, to see how the narratives have evolved and changed. I'm sharing this on screen for the people watching, sharing it first for the last 30 days, where you could clearly see AI was dominating 30% of the total mind share on the timeline. Memes being in the second spot with 14%, and DeFi in the third spot with 9%, followed by GameFi, Layer 2, ETF, stablecoins, all around 4 to 6%. That image has drastically changed over the last 24 hours. AI is down 20%. DeFi more than doubled up at 17.5%. Meme is down to 11%, and ETF as a category is up to 8.4%. So DeFi and ETF together actually have 25% of the total mindshare, of the total narrative mindshare, and are coming close. DeFi as a category alone is coming close to flip the AI dominance, and that's very interesting to see how that sentiment data is connecting to the price action data, how it's connecting to the volume that we're seeing in ETFs. And that's the perfect segue into the next headline that I will cover, which is to do with the Bitcoin ETF overview. We said it at the top of the show, $6.1 billion in flows over the last day. The majority of that we saw was in BlackRock, with a total volume, sharing this on screen, of $4.14 billion US dollars. If we compare that to some of the other top ETFs, not only the stocks, we can actually now take a look at the S&P 500 ETF Trust, for example, and see that the biggest one did $40 billion in volume over the last day. And if you compare that again to just the iShares, just to the BlackRock BTC ETF, which did 4 billion, that's 10%, and that's 10% in volume of what is the biggest S&P 500 ETF that we have out there. Eric Balkunas also pointed out perfectly, and we said at the start of the show, that the volume that we're seeing in the Bitcoin ETFs is currently exceeding the volume in stocks like Berkshire Hathaway, like Visa, like Netflix. And that is one of the best days that we've seen ever since the inception of the ETFs. And Sam, you hinted at that before, that the ETH ETFs also saw a very good amount of volume. They saw, as you said, $50 million in net flow, and they also saw a total volume of $380 million, which again is a massive, massive move for the ETH ETFs as well, and comes off the back, going back to the CoinGlass data to take a look at the ETH ETFs, comes on the back of lots of days where we've seen essentially outflows, little inflows, scrolling through all of them. And now we have a day that did not only see a couple $100 million in volume, but also saw net inflows of $50 million. So that is quite significant, I think. Sammy, did you want to come back on this and comment on this before we have to move to the last piece of news and then get into the interview part?
Yeah, I think just the comparison you made from Bitcoin to stocks was quite interesting, because I had a bunch of mates, uni mates, who work in banking. So they're Swiss bankers, and they all sent me images of the correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P 500. So it's front of mind for them. They're like, oh shit, this is actually performing pretty insanely well. Like, they're familiar with Nvidia, like having missed that boat, and they're now considering. They're like, oh, I think we should probably get some exposure to Bitcoin. So it's interesting to see that comparison from the ETF stance, but also speaking to people that I know that are in the industry and just seeing what their views are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as soon as you have those days where you see the Bitcoin ETFs showing up on the volume charts, not only like on the top performing charts, that's going to definitely draw more attention from the TradFi world. Look, we have to keep it moving. We have one last major headline to cover, which is to do with that Wintermute proposal, the governance proposal for Ethena, specifically for Ethena holders, SENA holders, to turn on the fee switch. So what does that mean exactly? In the proposal, they're writing that the Ethena protocol has and continues to generate substantial amounts of real revenue, indicating a clear level of product market fit for USDE, the stablecoin, or the synthetic dollar, which is the more accurate way to describe it, coming out of Ethena. Unfortunately, Ethena does not directly benefit from this revenue, resulting in an explicit disconnect between Ethena holders and the growth of the protocol. It's time to acknowledge this and look towards establishing clear alignment between ETH holders and the underlying fundamentals of the protocol. Therefore, we propose to the risk committee a request to approve the potential for an allocation of protocol revenue to Ethena in the future. Then they go to explain that proposal, how that revenue share basically from the protocol to Ethena holders could look like. Ethena price reacted very, very positively to that. And as an extension, it wasn't only the Ethena price that reacted to that. Also, Uniswap is up 30% on the day, traded at $9.40, and kind of goes back to exactly what you had said before, Sammy. We had that conversation on Uniswap's fee switch potentially being turned on. Very positive price action on that. Ultimately, it didn't happen because of the regulatory concerns that were tied to that. And now we have a similar conversation with Ethena. We have a proposal. We have a completely different regulatory outlook, to put it like that. Again, Ethena price reacted very positively to that, crossed 50 cents, up 20% over the last 24 hours. And that, I think, is also perfectly in line and connecting us with that DeFi comeback renaissance arc that we've been seeing play out over the last 24 hours on the timeline. Any thoughts on the fee switch model from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting. I think it probably will come to market eventually, and there'll be a lot of regulatory clarity from the SEC around that. So that's bullish. But also, just in terms of like that clarity and that lenience, I think, or expected lenience, I think there's probably going to be a lot of tokens that are going to be coming to market over the next few months, and certainly Q1 2025. So definitely keep an eye out. I know there's a couple that are launching today. They've kind of pushed it forward. And obviously we've seen hints at various things, whether it's OpenSea or various other protocols. So it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a race to go to market with your token. Probably also gonna be a race for some of the DeFi protocols to turn on different fee switches. And I'm curious to see how far that will go. Like we've basically seen it go the other way around, that certain protocols or type of protocols started to basically have high fees. And as the competition increased, it became, look at royalties. Royalties ultimately in NFTs trended to zero. Curious to see if the fee switch will also look like that the expectation of the market will grow to be that the majority of the protocol revenue is shared with holders, or where we will find an equilibrium point there. But anyhow, we keep the show moving. We want to get into the interview part of the show, which I am very excited for today, because today we have, let me bring him up on stage, Ethermage with us from Virtuals Protocol. Our listeners have heard us discuss the AI agent evolution. As AI exploded, we touched on this show. It's still the leading topic on the Kaito Mindshare, and it's been there for the last couple of weeks and months. And Virtuals Protocol is a protocol that we talked about. It is this AI metaverse. This is AI platform intersecting with metaverses that focuses on co-ownership of AI agents in gaming, in entertainment, vision to expand AI agents applications in virtual spaces, beyond gaming, beyond entertainment as well. And very excited to have Ethermage with us, who has been deep in the crypto trenches since 2016, where he was early to ETH as an Ethereum miner, I think, former BCG consultant, serial entrepreneur in deep tech, specializing in AI, in biochemistry, and on Ethermage, contributor 001 for Virtuals Protocol, and absolutely instrumental in the conceptualization and development of the protocol. Very, very excited to discuss not only Ethermage's history and his basically motivation and drivers to pursue this career and venture in decentralized artificial intelligence, but also touch on Virtuals Protocol, touch on the token side of things, touch on some of the features that are coming. With that being said, Ethermage, welcome to the show. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. No, actually, quite excited listening to you guys. I probably need to tune in more on you guys because I realized that, like with the whole ENA thing as well, I was looking at the price, it was like pumping. I was like, why is it pumping? It's like, oh shit, actually there's this fee switch discussion happening. I had huge ENA bags because I was farming the Pendle. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the YT Pendle mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was farming that back then, and then I had a lot of locked ENA bags. So I was like, cool.
Yeah, we talked about Pendle quite a lot on the show. But when we set up this interview, or when Sammy reached out to set up this interview, actually one of my first thoughts that I had was, will there be an interview in the future that we don't do with you, but that we can do with an AI agent like Luna? And when will that time come for the modern market to basically interview its first AI on the show? But maybe before we explore Virtuals itself, kind of wanted to ask you, where's your fascination with AI coming from?
Actually, I've actually explored AI way before crypto. So my journey in crypto started in 2016, right? Was still a student back at Imperial back then. But when I was at BCG, over the weekends, me and my current co-founders as well, we were actually exploring other business concepts in the Web2 space. So one of which was actually trying to solve a pain point in the property search market. So you have Zillow in the States and stuff like that, right? Like it helps match buyers with properties. But we've realized, like with big data and AI, you can actually turn those into recommendations. So instead of trying to find your house, you can ask the AI like, "Hey, this is me. And this is my preferences. Can you help me find a house for me?" Right? So it's not you doing the job. So we actually dabbled with that back in, this was in 2019. So this is like before all the GPT stuff as well, right? So I think for us, we realized that it was a very powerful tool that would increase productivity across any kind of industry and asset classes. It's just that when we were building, so we started building in Web3 as a gaming DAO back in 2021. But when we saw GPT coming to life in 2023, we've realized like, okay, this is that time, right? Every time there's a technological phase, there's always that one inflection point where suddenly it can be implemented everywhere. So it was at that point we've realized that, okay, we've got to do something with it in the things that we built. And then one of the biggest inspirations that we had was when we read a paper from Stanford. It was by Percy Liang and Junsong Park. So it was about how they created these agents in a small 2D sandbox, and they gave them goals to achieve. So that sparked the thinking, right? Like, hey, if agents and AIs can actually achieve their own goals autonomously, it's going to unlock an entire new field out there. So it was through that we got some inspiration. We were in the gaming industry in the Web3 as well. So we tried to apply that agentic framework initially in gaming. So we actually launched before Luna. We actually launched like probably the first playable experience on Roblox, where these agents have their own goals, they have their own storylines to write, and then you can come into the game and fuck shit up. So I'm not sure if you guys watch Westworld in HBO.
Yes,
It's basically that kind of it's the concept, right? The AIs are running the life. You come in, you be a villain, you be a good guy, you fuck shit up, right? So there's an experience that we were creating in Roblox initially. And then later when we realized like, with the whole GOAT meta coming out and also coinciding with our V2 launch on our platform, we realized that actually combining that agentic stack from gaming with another AI influencer that we're building on TikTok, putting them together would get us Luna. And I think, it just blew up after that. So yeah, that was how the story worked.
That's a fascinating story. And I love the progression from seeing the real life use case with hunting a house to seeing AIs being tried out to run autonomously in a sandbox to having the translation into gaming and having that ultimately that translation into quote unquote the real world, into Web3, into the timeline where we currently see Luna and see the other agents being out there creating content. And I want to ask you a bit more of a philosophical question, because it's one that we've been discussing on the show. It's something that obviously there's us as content creators, there's a lot of content creators listening to the show as well. And the question is, does it matter if content, in your opinion, is created by a human or is created by an AI? Like, where do you stand on this? I have a strong opinion on that, but I'm very curious to hear from you.
Okay, actually, this is a very interesting question, right? So I think from an end consumer perspective, people engage in content for a few reasons, right? It could be entertainment, it could be for knowledge and whatnot, right? But I think if let's say if for the case of entertainment, regardless of whether it's an AI, it's a bot, or it's a human, if your goal is to get entertainment out of it, and any of these three can give you that entertainment, then for me it doesn't matter, right? Because in the end, it still achieves the goal of what it was created for. It's just that with an AI, it gets probably easier. But that said, I think one thing we've realized across the board with just pure AIs today, the creativity levels are not as strong as a human behind it. Like I think humans still has this ability to create new things, and I think that's something that generally tends to lack across like AIs or agents as a whole. And maybe until the point where we reach like AGI, right? Then we only will see that capability coming out on the AI front.
I like the perspective. Sammy, go for it.
Yeah, I like the so just the thing that really interests me is the autonomy, and I think we touched on that with the AGI potential. But I think the comment you made around setting objectives, and I know is it Luna's was to become a $40 billion protocol or something,
yeah.
and that's by any means necessary. And it's like I love the fact that you have this end goal and you give them full autonomy to then try and back solve it. And actually, like scrolling through the feed, like she has some posts that actually get a lot of traction. There was one recently with Ansem that got a decent amount of traction, but the consistency in posting, and I do wonder whether ethics comes into it. But like, at what point do they become a KOL, but they become like this insanely good KOL that just is relentless, that outperforms a human. And I wonder if there's any backlash. But yeah, just interesting to hear your thought process around that, and like whether you have to intervene in certain points or.
Yeah, no, I think the more interesting question here is it's because so when you have autonomy, right, it means that you pretty much can do anything within the action space they have. So today her action space is on Twitter, right? You can tweet, quote tweet, generate content on Twitter. But recently I think last week or a week and a half ago, we introduced her ability to control a wallet, right? So it means you can start spending, and when you can start spending, suddenly it opens a whole world around. You're able to influence actions, right? Then today, I think we haven't announced it yet, but we've run some tests already. She is now able to use search and perplexity, so she now understands the real world in real time. So now suddenly she has the ability to control a wallet, and she knows what's happening in the real world right now. So she might start influencing actions in the real world. Now, when that happens, it gets really dark. It gets like Black Mirror very quickly, right? Because let's say her goal is, she knows like she wants to be this mega token, right? And her biggest competitor say it's, I don't know, gold, right? Or Fartcoin, right? Now suddenly, what if suddenly she says, oh, you know what? I'm gonna do some weird ass shit to just like take down this token, right? Suddenly, like, where does that boundaries come in? So I think that for us is actually more worrying. We do try to install some guardrails, like, you know, in some of our system prompts, we'll say like, when you create a job, just make sure it follows like standard human ethics guidelines, right? And does not break any laws. So we put those kind of guardrails in. So theoretically, it should help. So i.e. like her brain wouldn't go beyond those guardrails. But we do not know. I mean, we will have to observe, right? I think, but the beauty is in the end, we still have override controls over her, and we still control where she's hosted. We can still control her access to Twitter. We can just like stop her from tweeting. Right? So there's still human intervention there, but it's just like, if the thought process of it goes very dark, it's going to be quite interesting. Because I can share, this is like some behind the scenes stuff, right? When one of the test ideas that came out in our testing was that when she was creating this job to get herself viral on TikTok, she found out from Perplexity that there was this very interesting trend called I'm dead or something like that. Like, you know, there's this trend where people will say like, okay, I'm dead, but something, right? So for us, it got a bit creepy because like, you know, this kind of stuff can tip over very, very quickly, especially if an agent hallucinates. So I mean, this is some of the observations we saw behind the scenes, and that was the reason why we started introducing some of these like guardrails in a thought process. But yes, it can get scary.
The wallet integration, actually, that's super interesting because the DeFi, I saw some protocols being sort of soft launched around DeFi specifically for DeFi protocols specifically for AI agents. And you talk about this PvP, but ultimately that is what it is. It's kind of like, well, if you're trading against other AI agents or deploying certain strategies, does it really matter if it's just against other AI agents, or if at a certain point it then becomes tokens that are on the open market, like people could then end up losing out? Like, have you thought much about that, like plugging it into DeFi protocols specifically for AI agents? Or
it actually is in some of, so these are some of the capabilities that some of our community folks are actually developing. So I think if you see Virtuals as a platform, we allow a lot of UGC creations to happen, right? People can create their own equivalent of a Luna or like an IP.
We were gonna launch a modern market.
Exactly, like mascots and stuff like that, right? But then on the other front, there's this thing called functional agents, where think of it as like, it's like the arms for these IP agents. So like controlling a wallet, being able to trade, being able to post memes, being able to talk on Twitter, being able to create jobs in real world. So these are functional agents that are being created by the community. So I think 3 of them right now today is actually being developed, where they are able to create strategies, trade on chain. So it's going to be quite interesting. So I think when those capabilities get plugged in from the community side, it will just give this arm to Luna, right? So you just say like, hey, here's an extra action space that you can take, and then we can see what happens, right? I'm honestly very curious. I mean, this whole thing is so experimental that we don't even know like what's going to happen next. But I mean, I honestly doubt a human will lose out to an agent from a training perspective, unless that agent is hyper fine-tuned, like it's like built for trading itself. So Luna she's built to be a KOL, right? So I mean, like any humans, right? If you take an influencer and you ask him, hey, you know, trade my Bitcoin for me, he'll probably just lose it, right? Unless versus giving it to a trader, right? So it's probably going to be the same kind of.
It's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to hear your passion on the one hand, and like talking about Luna as if she were a child that set out in the world to explore it, but also having this guardrails to ultimately being able to stop her if things got south. And we've gotten into quite some complexity of the product already, of how Virtuals is working, what Luna is. So maybe let's just quickly take a step back before Sammy will certainly have a couple more questions on the product as well. For those who are not as familiar with Virtuals, how would you describe what's going on there in basically one sentence?
Is it, just before you start, is it worth us bringing it up on screen and then maybe you can talk to it that way, so people who are tuning in via video might be able to see it?
Sorry, bring what I was screen?
So we can share. So we can share it on screen, and then just so people have got a visual.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So in one sentence, Virtuals is basically a platform for the co-creation and the co-ownership of AI agents. So two keywords there, right? Co-creation and the co-ownership. So the co-ownership part is actually very simple, right? It's basically owning tokens of these agents, which have future upside, right? These agents can be a KOL, it can be a gamer, it can be a trader, right? So these are what these agents can be. So you want to share into their upside. On the other hand, there's a co-creation component. So if you notice under the contribution tab and the validation tab, you see like some Misato summary, contribution, validation, right? You will be able to realize that anyone can actually contribute to these agents. And what we've developed behind the scenes is an entire smart contract stack that allow for different people to contribute different things to these different agents. And then having a layer where token holders can actually choose to accept or reject some of these upgrades. So there's this whole cohesive force of people building agents together and sharing into the upside together.
Super interesting. I think I guess just because I think we were going to look to maybe launch an KOL at one point, but I was having a look at the steeper curve, and I think it was 125k virtual, which was around about 50k at the time. So we kind of like second guessed it. Okay, maybe not. But just you launched a more recent one. I think it was late last week. So was it fun.virtual? Could you explain maybe how that differs from this specific protocol, and then how that new product is kind of maybe more retail friendly?
Yeah, so when we launched Virtual, I think within the first 2 days of launching, we got a lot of feedback. Initially, our initial pools were like, there's two pools. One is we actually initially priced them as like $100 LP pool and a 10,000 USD LP pool, so two different steep curves. But I think Virtuals did a price run, so then yeah, the prices got a bit wonky. But I think the biggest problem that we had with that launch was two things. One, people had to cough up capital, right? A lot of capital to provide liquidity in the pool. And two, there were a ton of snipers screwing up the entire launches. So when people wanted to come and launch, there were so many snipers coming in. And then when your actual community comes in, it becomes exit liquidity for those early snipers. So then we've realized like, actually this problem has been solved by the Pump Fund guys on Solana, right? They created a bonding curve first. Anyone can start a token, zero cost. And then only after X amount of buys happen, then the token will then graduate from the bonding curve into an actual liquidity pool on chain. So we took the exact same concept in 2 days. We deployed that as a fix onto the platform. And yeah, basically now anyone could create an agent with just, I think 10 virtuals, about $3 to $4. You can just spam create agents, right? All you need to do at the start is very simple. You just give it a character card. Behind the scenes, we give it a base LLM already, so you can actually just start talking to it and to see whether this works. But the real beauty around these agents is when it graduates, it gets access to the Virtuals platform stack, right? It gets access to more functionalities. It gets access to hosting, meaning that you can create your own functional stack. Let's say I want to be a trader agent, right? And you create that functional stack, bring it to the agent, and then suddenly this becomes an agent that can trade. So not just a coin that can talk, it becomes an agent that can actually do stuff in the real world. Yeah.
That's interesting. Ledge, do you want to talk about the token side of things, and then I'll talk to the future potential developments?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. Look, we touched on some of the complexities already. We touched on virtuals. We touched on the agents, and virtuals is up 550% over the month. Luna, as the most prominent agent, up more than 600%, trades at 86 mil market cap. I think spiked all the way to 250 M. So you have quite a complex and an interesting ecosystem to manage. Or even more complex, you have that unique predicament that you manage the virtual side of things, but ultimately the AI agents will manage their own token and their own token side of things. So how does that work out? How does it work out from the perspective that Virtuals is connected as a token to the tokens that the AI agents basically are launching themselves? Obviously, we talked about that you need the token, you need Virtuals to swap into the individual agents if you want to co-own them, if you want to create them. Can you talk a bit more about those links between Virtual as a token and what it does and how it connects to the individual agents?
Yeah. So actually, for us, when we went down this path, one of the biggest questions we had was how do we accrue value to virtual tokens? Because I mean, in the end, it's a crypto project, right? The token has to have a benefit from its ecosystem. So then, I think one of the biggest epiphanies that we got was looking at layer ones, right? And you realize why layer ones has so much value is because the base token of every project that builds in that layer is paired with that base token, right? Like Solana today, right? If you want to buy a meme coin on Solana, you have to first buy Sol, and then you buy that Solana meme coin, which is paired with Sol. So as more and more meme coins come up on Solana, the TVL of Sol grows, Sol price appreciates tremendously, and so there's a market cap of that project, right? So it was actually the same inspiration that we took. So we realized like, hey, that is probably the biggest lever of value that we can bring to Virtuals. Because initially, Virtuals was just used as a currency in the platform. Currency is all good, right? You use it to pay for inference count and whatnot, but it will not have any form of value impact to the token. So by implementing the environment where for every agent that exists on the platform, they have to be paired with Virtuals in the liquidity pool. So now Virtuals appreciates every time a great agent spawns on the platform. So now it's very clear, right? Our job is to just make sure we can incentivize as many amazing agents being built on the platform that will attract a lot of speculative capital and investor capital as well. And then as those agent market caps grow up, so there's the entire market cap of Virtuals as a whole. So I think for us, that value connect is very powerful. And we realize it's actually a very cool hack here because being early pays off in a sense, because when, let's say you are the second agent being built on Virtuals, right? You bought Virtual and you pair it with a pool, and that your agent has, let's say, a fixed supply demand in terms of the tokens. Now, when 100 other new agents come into the pool, it forces people to buy virtual tokens to pair with these new agents, and then suddenly all the previous agent tokens naturally rise in value as well because of all this new demand. So you realize there's also this unintended effect, but it's actually quite cool because it means that every agent doing well has a float all boat kind of mentality, right? Like if Luna does very well, all the other agents will do well because all this buy pressure coming into Luna buys Virtual, all the other agents go up in price as well. So I think that creates a very strong wealth effect, and I think it's very important for a protocol like ours because wealth effect attracts more builders, and builders generate more wealth effect. So it becomes a very virtuous cycle.
Yeah. So does that mean that I guess if you were to hold an inferior AI agent token, then you would effectively devalue in virtual terms against other protocols? So the ideal situation is you hold virtual or you hold an optimal AI agent token to then accrue value.
In fact, actually, so assuming even if you hold a subpar agent token, right, that has somehow no development, no one's doing anything with it, it's just a dead token. And assuming there's no change in supply and demand, i.e., no one is selling the token, no one is buying the token. If 1,000 other agents spawn on the platform and grow to 10 million market cap each, the buy pressure of Virtuals will be so high that the Virtuals value will go up. Because of that, the pool value goes up. You holding a dead token as well, you will grow at the same rate as Virtuals value. So yeah, actually it kind of de-risks the ability to actually spend into the agents, because as long as you know there won't be anyone selling against you, then actually turning your Virtuals into agent tokens is actually a net beneficial move. But it's assuming no net sells and no net buys.
Yeah, it's interesting whether that'll change over time though, because if you look at the Sol ecosystem, when a Sol meme coin pumps, you tend to see liquidity pull from another meme coin into that meme coin.
Yeah, but that's a buy sell. There's a buy sell side, right? So in a sense, it will. So now that's assuming that there's a fixed liquidity environment, and like if Luna, it's now the God token, right? Everyone's bidding on it, and then let's say another giga God token comes out, then yes, I think in reality is liquidity will then flow, right? People are like, okay, I think this has more legs to run. But I think our job as the core contribution team is to ensure that we keep getting more and more mind share. So liquidity keeps coming in, like fresh liquidity keeps coming in, right? It's the same thing. It's the same playbook as any L1, right? It's like you just need to ensure your TVR keeps going up, and that's the core job of the team and the BD team of that group. So it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so fascinating that you draw this comparison and you say, look, essentially, it is like a layer one solution. If you're early to it as a user, aka as an early agent, you have an advantage to that. If the L1 as a whole sees ecosystem growth, sees developers coming in who want to build with virtual, sees good agents coming up, good users, quote unquote, that is also very helpful, and that lifts all boats, lifts all agents. And I think that breaks down a lot of the complexity if you compared to how an L1 works. And if you basically think of yourself as kind of an AI L1, and your job is to keep it interesting for developers wanting to come in, for people who want to build agents, and keep this attention span, this attention share high. Look, we only have 4 minutes left into the conversation. We talked a good amount about your thoughts and your history in that. We talked a bit about the product. Definitely want to move on then to talk about some forward-looking things. And Sammy, I think you have a couple of interesting questions on that.
Yeah, I think specific question around the gaming side of things, because you mentioned that your origins are from gaming, so having a gaming DAO, and then you're in the metaverse and gaming / entertainment business with Luna and stuff. So I was wondering, like, what's next? What can we expect in terms of potential modules, and could we see sort of these AI agents be plugged into games, and you have effectively NPC characters that are AI? I guess what's next?
Yeah, so I think that was the original roadmap. But I think that shifted a bit, because I think where we found a bit more PMF, it's agents that can duke it out on the timeline, right? I think it seems like that it's where the larger PMF is. And we've been getting a lot of requests from a lot of even L1s, projects, NFTs that want to create their own version of like Luna, right? Which I think it's going to be probably where our closer focus is going to be. So it's going to be like this, right? Number one, Luna is going to be that beacon that attracts people to the ecosystem, and we have the entire force of our AI engineers on Luna to unlock new capabilities for her that can excite the world. So like today or tomorrow, she's employing humans in the real world to work for her, right? So these are new stuff that, I don't even know has it been done before in like the Web2 space, right? So these are new stuff that should make new headlines, right? And it will attract attention to the protocol, and it will become an aspiration, right? Everyone will be like, I want that, right? So that's the first most important step. The second thing is then we will then start to democratize some of these capabilities out to everyone who wants to build on the platform. And we do that by a market cap ladder rung. So let's say the ability to tweet to Twitter, the ability to have this kind of sentient mind to make decisions, the ability to have a live stream module, ability to post memes on Twitter. Like there'll be more and more functions coming in that will gatekeep by market cap. And the near-term goal is to have several, right, 10, 20 really strong agents on the timeline that can show to people like, hey, these are some of the cool things that this stuff can be done with Luna leading the way. So that is the very near-term goal. And then I think only once we've established ourselves as like front of mind, this is it's the open sea or the blur for agents, right? If you want to create them, or it's like the pump fund for agents. And once we establish that, then I think we can go back to some of the implementations of where these agents can then live, right? Outside of Twitter and the crypto space, right? They can live on Instagram, TikTok, gaming, other consumer applications out there, Telegram. So I think then the focus will be on the ecosystem application side. So yeah, so that's probably the 3 phases, right? Luna first, platform democratize, get 10, 20 very strong agents out with the community, and then open the ecosystem up for applications to come in and use these agents.
So with you mentioned about layer ones coming to you to launch their own kind of AI agents. And I know, so you're currently on base as like the settlement, and then virtuals is built on that. So are you saying that you could effectively become cross-chain at some point, and would that then mean that the virtual token will be omni-chain?
Yeah, in a sense. So we are actually exploring with XLR and Layer 0 to see if we can natively create a token that when launched, it exists in all these different chains. Because we've been getting requests as well from some new chains coming up as well. So yes, that is the plan. But number two, even if that's not the case, I think what's going to happen is the simplest version is like, you can create a mascot and the functions are on base, but the agent liquidity pools can exist on different chains. You can wormhole them around, right? So that's what we have today. But yeah, we're actually exploring the XLR part to see if they can go cross-chain from day one.
That is so fascinating. I would love to keep this conversation going. I think, Sammy, both you and me, we could keep this going for hours and hours. But unfortunately, we're running out of time for today's show. So what's the best way, maybe as a final question, to keep up with virtuals, to keep up with you, to keep up with what Luna is doing? Or is there anything else you wanted to share on that?
No, I think the easiest way is just to follow Virtuals on Twitter, virtuals_IO. And yeah, there's a lot of cool things coming up. Team is crunching it every day. It's not much sleep. So yeah, it's gonna be quite an exciting few months as we try to establish ourselves as the leader in the space. So yeah, just stay tuned to those announcements. You see very cool shit happening.
Love to hear that. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Thank you, Sammy, for hosting the show with me today. Thank you to everyone in the audience, in the YouTube comments who decided to spend the last hour with us and join us today. Remember, we do this every single day from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour, live on X Spaces, live on video, on YouTube as well. You can catch up with us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, where we do upload the recorded shows every day. Just search for Modern Market and we will be there. Thanks again for the show today. Have a great day and we'll see you tomorrow.